What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. Today, we're going to get into wood chips and other mulches. It's hard to believe that over 7 years ago was the first time I brought my first load of wood chips into this garden. After all that time, if I could go back, would I change anything? Would I do anything different? Are using wood chips actually worth it? That's what we're going to get into. Let's go! To start things off, I want to show you some of the trees that I planted about 7 or 8 years ago using a wood chip mulch. As you can see, we've got a peach tree here, nice and tall. If I brought you closer, you'd see it's got a lot of fruit on it. And as we look underneath it, we've got a thick wood chip mulch that we've had down for years. And there's a number of things mulches do. One of the main ones that it does is actually retains moisture, which is important, especially when you're growing fruit trees, and especially if you're in a hot area. Another thing the mulch is going to do for you is to help insulate the soil in the winter and at other times when you get those cold spells. So it's going to keep your soil level a lot warmer than it would if you didn't actually have that mulch on top. A third thing it's going to do is, especially if you have a natural mulch like wood chips or even straw, what it's going to do is to actually break down slowly and feed and fertilize your plants. So let me just look underneath one of my fruit trees here. You can see we've got a bunch of different perennials growing underneath it. We've got currants and strawberries, but if we take a look down, dig into the mulch, we'll see that there's fungus in there. That's something so important too. We're going to talk about that as the video progresses, but you can see it's nice and wet. I mean, we did just have a rain, but come here even in the middle of the summer, which I will show you, and it's still going to be nice and wet. This is beautiful. This is great for growing fruit trees. A wood chip mulch is ideal for growing fruit trees. So as we step back, we can see the trees have excelled using this wood chip mulch. And we're going to get into other mulches too, because it's not just wood chips that's going to have a great effect on all your plants. You may have noticed when I pulled back those wood chips, you saw some strands of fungus or fungal hyphae in there, which I think is a great sign because it's a good indication that we have mycorrhizal fungi, which is so important, I believe, when growing healthy fruit trees. Because when we have this kind of fungi, you can develop this sort of symbiotic relationship called the mycorrhizal association. And what happens is actually the roots of trees connect in with those fungal hyphae, those strands of fungus in there, and they form that beneficial connection, sharing both water and nutrients, which is ideal because this fungus can stretch out the whole garden. So when we have a whole thick garden of wood chips, this could potentially be one big fungus that all of our trees are plugging into. So as some of you may have heard in some of my other videos, once I put my fruit trees in, and I get them in the ground, that first time I give them a big heavy watering, then most likely after that I don't water again. That might not be the same for you, dependent upon your situation, how much rainfall you get. But I believe if we can build a good healthy soil, have a thick mulch down, and just watch and guide the trees, that's the best way to do it. I want my trees stretching, reaching out, looking for that fungus. So it's not just wood chips that can form, these beneficial connections, and create the ideal environment for growing funguses and other things. There's also things like I mentioned, straw. Some of you may have heard of the RUTH STOUT method, where she uses just mainly straw for growing a lot of her vegetables and stuff. That's a great way to do it too. Even rocks work. I heard someone talk about how if you go out into a desert and it's or a really, really dry climate, you'll notice everything's basically dead and dry. Then you find a rock, you lift that rock up, it's usually a little wet, you find some life in there. So creating that ideal amount of moisture through mulches, through whatever kind of mulch you can use, whether that be rocks or straw or wood chips or whatever, that's going to bring more microbiological life and more life in your garden in general. And like we say, life supports life. As you can see right here, this is a section that I just dug up. And to the left here, you won't see really any weeds. We've got a thick layer of wood chips down, and the only plants that are really growing are ones that I want growing, which is perfect, which is ideal. But I want to bring you back in a section now in the back of the garden where I didn't keep up on the wood chips, so we've got a lot of weeds growing, which just means more work if we have to pull them ourselves. So you'll notice right here there's a number of weeds growing. I don't have the wood chips thick enough. So what I'm going to do is add some more wood chips to that so we can cover it, get the mulch, which will help support the trees, but will also make it easier on us so we don't have to do any weeding. A lot of people ask me what's the best time to put wood chips in, when can you put wood chips in, what kind of wood chips are best. That's all stuff we're going to be going over. In regards to the best time to get your wood chips in, ideally, in my opinion, the best time is late fall or early winter. The reason for that is because you're going to be going into the rainy season. This way your wood chips can get super saturated with water throughout the winter season, and your ground will be nice and wet, holding all that moisture in, so that when you start growing in the spring, it'll be perfect and ready to go. Another thing is, if you can use wood chips fresh that have just been cut, that have the greens mixed in them. Yes, you can use them when they're fresh cut with the greens mixed in, but ideally, again, the best time is the fall. The thing that matters though is that you get them in. For instance, since I didn't get them in the fall, I'm gonna get them in today. It's still not bad timing because we're in the early spring. So secondary, I guess best choice would be the spring to get them in. But again, best time would be fall and into winter. We're also going to talk about what wood chips work and if there are some that don't work and some you should avoid. Now what I want to do is take you into the new food forest that I just put in about 2 years ago. And when I put it in, I put this wood chips down. Well, first I laid cardboard paper down, and then I put wood chips over that. I did that in the late fall, and then come next spring, it was ready to plant. A lot of the grass and everything had been broken down. And to use that cardboard paper, the first idea with that is to suppress the weeds, suppress the grass, not to rip it out, because we love that grass in there, and we love the cardboard paper in there because that's food for the worms. So if you can get wood chips that are called, I believe, arborist wood chips, those are the ones that have the needle still in them, the leaf still in them. Those are great. Not because it's going to help in the composting process, but because it's going to help feed all the worms and everything. So if you can just get wood chips, that's okay. But if you can get the ones with the leaves and needles in it, that's ideal. Often people ask, can I use sawdust? Is it the same thing? No, it's definitely not the same thing. It doesn't have the same life in it. It doesn't have the same feed that wood chips would have. It doesn't have the greens material in it. Also, the sawdust can get like clumpy, and it actually can mat out the ground kind of, and I believe it kind of suffocates some of the life in the soil. So those sawdust I would avoid if you could. Stick with the wood chips, that's the best. As I show you the ground layer in the new food forest, one thing you should notice right away is how many mushrooms are in here and how well they're excelling. I believe these may be the King Strophoria mushrooms, but I'm not 100% positive. The wine cap mushrooms, so I don't really want to take the chance. I'm sort of afraid to. But seeing these mushrooms, even if I can't eat them, it's just a great feeling knowing that we've got the right moisture content in here. And these are what's actually breaking down the wood chips. These are the decomposers, feeding on this mulch and breaking it down and creating excellent soil for us. So there's an old saying that a forest grows on a fallen forest. So you go into any natural forest, you'll see a tree that has fallen down, and you'll notice fungus that are actually eating that up, breaking it down, turning it into soil, and there's a bunch of smaller trees growing right around it. So that's kind of what the concept we're doing. It's like a bunch of trees fell in here, and now we're growing new ones with the old trees. And one thing that I like to say is how you can take a whole tree, say a 40-year-old oak tree, you could chip that up, drop it on the ground, and that's almost like 40 years of condensed solar energy. When you think about it, if you've got a tree like this mulberry above me, say it is a 30-year-old tree, you chip that whole thing, you drop it down in your garden, just imagine all that energy wrapped up in those, in the leaves, in the bark, in the wood. It's ideal in my opinion. You'll see how deep we have the wood chips here though, and some of our tomatoes aren't doing great. We've had some rough weather lately, but you'll see how deep when I put my hand in, and over here we've got these wood chips deep. We want them nice and deep. We want to be feeding the soil, bringing the fungus in, and actually keeping the weeds out. That's one of the great things that we're doing. As I walk through this food forest in here, you'll notice little to no weeds. That's because we have the thick layer of wood chips. So what I'm going to do is go out, get some wood chips locally, pick them up, bring them back, get them into the older food forest, and get that thing covered. Now I'm heading over to go get some wood chips. I wanted to bring you all along with me. I got my tarp in the back, my pitchfork, and that should basically be all I need. And I grabbed my tripod in case I want to show you some of the things when I get there. And one of the questions that I often get from you all is, James, why don't you just make your own wood chips? Why don't you just get a wood chipper? There's a few reasons why I don't. One of the things is I have this recycling center just local to me, only about 7 minutes away. So it's easy for me to just go pick it up. Another thing is I don't feel like going out and purchasing a wood chipper. Usually if you want a good one, in my opinion, you have to get a pretty expensive one and a gas one. So I don't want to run a gas one because it's loud, it's dangerous, and I don't want to just smell gas when I'm out in the garden doing work and stuff. I'd rather just fill the back of my truck up. Fortunately, I have it with a lot of the branches and the trees and stuff that I pruned. that I cut down. I'd rather just fill the truck up, bring it to the recycling center, let them take it, and then pick up my own wood chips that are perfectly cut up, triple ground, ready for me to go. In my opinion, that's just easy. Another thing is the wood chips are always here, so they're accessible. I don't have to do all the work, and then whenever I need them, say I wanted, you know, a cubic yard of wood chips, I don't have to grind my own cubic yard. I can just go pick them up whenever I want them here. They also deliver if I want to get a good amount of them. And another thing is, I live in a suburban environment, which could be an advantage for some things like resources because they're so accessible for me. I know if you're in more of like a rural area, it may be harder for you to get wood chips, but you guys have so much space. So that's one of the advantages you have. In the suburban environment, everyone's just getting rid of things and getting rid of natural materials, and people are getting trees cut down all the time. So I can just find local people who are cutting their trees down also if I want the wood chips with the greens in them, which I got last year when I put the food forest in. So that's a few reasons why I don't chip my own. Another question people often ask is, will wood chips acidify your soil? My answer to that after using them for a long time would be absolutely not, but there's always a but. They won't acidify your soil if you use them as a mulch, but if you start mixing the wood chips into the soil and tilling them in, then they will acidify your soil. It'll give you what we call a soil stomachache. So the last thing you want to do is mix wood chips into your soil. And filming when I'm driving and when I'm at places like the dump always feels a little bit odd. So I don't know, it just feels different. I mean, I know we live in a different world where people are filming and vlogging everywhere, but still, I mean, in an area I live in, not in a city or something, it still feels different. I thought after I had a bigger following like I do now, that it would feel more normal, but it still doesn't. But still, I love bringing everyone along for it. So I'm gonna try to get some footage when I get to the dump, as much footage as I can. Another thing I wanted to talk about was kinds of wood chips. So some people will ask, can I use cedar wood chips? Can I use black walnut wood chips? And I would say, with a blanket statement, any wood chips you use, any trees will be fine, again, as long as you don't mix it into the soil. Everything basically breaks down, goes from dust to dust. So by the time the nutrition from the walnut wood chips, from the cedar wood chips gets down to your soil, it's gonna be so broken down to like a basic, in my opinion, form of carbon almost, that what it's gonna do is actually just gonna be relatively the same no matter what kind of chips you have. So if you have cedar tree, I definitely don't think it will acidify your soil. When I get wood chips, I'm not too particular on the kinds of trees. I do prefer maybe like something like an oak or a maple, because in my opinion, I think it'll break down a little quicker, even though the wood is harder. But just with seems like the pines don't break down, the needles don't break down as quick as some of the leaves do, and those feed the worms basically immediately. So that's what I like. Another question that's often thrown out there is, will wood chips bring termites to my garden? No, definitely not bring termites to your garden. Termites, most of the time, in my opinion, eat dry wood. That's what they love to eat. So they're not going to be eating the wood chips. Can the wood chips be like a an environment for them to harbor in, the termites? Yeah, they could. But the same way rocks would be any mulch could bring in and create the environment for termites. So I mean, I wouldn't put any mulch next to my house. I wouldn't put wood chips right up against the side of my house if it was wood. And I mean, if you put rocks, it's about the same scenario. So the termites aren't going to be eating your wood chips because they're wet, they're full of fungus, they're full of life. That's not the kind of wood that termites even like. So I'm going to be getting closer to the recycling center soon. I want to make sure I'm careful when I'm turning in here, so I'll catch you guys in a minute. We don't have much time today because I'm cutting it close. So this is some of the trees that have been taken down. Here we've got the mulch right in front of us. And we've got a triple ground wood chip mulch, which is the good stuff, the ideal stuff. I'm gonna get some in the truck. I just left the recycling center. I couldn't really film much because I didn't have enough time. I didn't even have enough time to fill up a whole load in the truck of wood chips, but I didn't want to push my luck with the people who are working there because I always come. I don't want to be on their bad side or anything. And I also just don't want to, make them stay or anything because of me. So I got what I could. I'll have to come back tomorrow and get another load or another few loads. And if I feel like I need a lot more, I can order some, but they only do about 10 cubic yards as the minimum. So that's a lot of wood chips to move. I don't know if I need that much for the food forest right now. And there's something I wanted to talk about on the way home. A lot of it has to do with taking advantage. I know I talk about it sometimes of your opportunities, and also just noticing the opportunities that are right before you. So I think it was like July or something, 2017, when I made a video talking about how I went and visited Joel Salatin. Because I was like a lot of people where I was like, I can't wait to get my 10-acre property. After I get my 10 or 12 acres, I'm going to start gardening. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But then I went out to visit Joel. I kind of told him my story. I told him I'm from New Jersey. I'm going to move down south. I'm going to start my own permaculture farm. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And he gave me some amazing wisdom where he just kind of said, where are you going? Why would you come down here? No one's doing it in New Jersey. You've got a great opportunity right where you're at. You know, that kind of shook me a little bit, because it made me, you know, I thought he was going to be like, that's a great idea, head down. But looking back, it was the best information I ever could have gotten, and I'm just so thankful he gave it to me. And it reminds me of a book, well, it was more of a speech that I just love so much, and it's called Acres of Diamonds by Russell, I think his name's Dr. Russell Conwell, I think it is. And he talks about how there's so many scenarios of people who go out looking for their big opportunity. They do all the homework, do the work, go look, find the ideal opportunity, when all the time the opportunity was right underneath their nose, right in their backyard. So there was a story about a guy who wanted to get into coal oil, and he did all the research. He learned everything about coal oil, where to get it, what it looks like, where it came from, how it's formed, and then he sold his property and went searching for coal oil, never found any. The guy who came to his property after saw it bleeding right out of the ground, a couple short after the man before had sold it. So he sold his acres of diamonds because he didn't even notice it was in his own backyard. And that's what kind of happened to me, I feel like, and a much, much, much smaller scale. But I went out to go visit Joel because I thought my acres of diamonds were out there. At the time, I think I had about 2,000, maybe 2,500 subscribers. And now it's been about a year and a half or so. And we've got over 120,000, which I just can't thank you all enough for. But that was the thing. I had my opportunity, my acres of diamond in my own backyard. And I went out searching for it when I really had it all right underneath my own nose. And I did all the research. I read all the books, got all the information, and I thought it was out there. But again, I just started to take advantage of the opportunities that I had right now, and that made all the difference. So I would encourage some of you, if you feel like you're in a spot where you're stuck, or you feel like you don't have any opportunities, go to work on what you can, because that opportunity that you're looking for is most likely underneath your own nose. And everyone says, I said it myself, there's no way it's here. There's no way my opportunity's here. But after you just put the work in day after day, everything accumulates. And that's an important concept. That's one of the reasons I love gardening so much, because everything's always accumulating. I started the garden out with just 5 or 6 fruit trees, and now I have more than I can even count. And I didn't do it all at once, I just did it a little bit every day, because it all adds up, it all accumulates, and it's all worth it. We are back home now. As you can see, I didn't get a full load. I really wanted to get more, but I just didn't have the time. That's okay, I'll go back tomorrow and the next day if I need to. And I just wanted to show some of these wood chips. This is what they call the triple ground wood chips. Gone through the grinder 3 times, so these are nice and small. Ideally, if you're gonna get wood chips that don't have the greens and stuff in them, then this is what you want, the smaller stuff, in my opinion. It's gonna break down a little quicker, but it's also gonna be a little better, easier to walk on, and putting around the plants is gonna be a little better. You don't want huge sticks if you don't have to get them, because if you put those around some of the annuals, sometimes that could damage those annual plants that are a little susceptible to getting poked by the chips and things like that. So I'm gonna get a wheelbarrow back here, get some of these lifted, and get them moving into the food forest. When it comes to moving wood chips, it's really not as bad as you would think it would be. They're actually relatively light compared to something like sand. And the thing is, even though they're light, they don't blow away because they kind of lock together. Something like a straw can blow away with strong winds, but I've never really seen my wood chips move much. People often ask me, how often do I have to put wood chips into my garden? That really depends on a lot of things. The size of them, how much you put down. So there's so many factors, but what you're gonna wanna do is make sure you have a pretty thick mulch. If you're constantly seeing weeds coming through, then it's not thick enough. If you do see weeds, just pull the top of the weed out, put more wood chips on top. That's basically all you really have to do. So let's get these moved into the food forest. I'll get load after load, and we'll just hack away at it. I got Tuck in the garden with me now. Like I previously mentioned, I've been growing with wood chips for about 7 or 8 years now. But if you don't trust what I'm doing here, check out Paul GAUTSCHI. He's been doing it for over 40 years. He's great evidence of growing with wood chips truly works. I'm going to pull some of these bigger weeds just before I put the chips down. Some of these raspberries I'm going to take out. Then I'll cover them right up. Anything I see popping through, I'll just pull out and cover with more wood chips. That's the idea. But one of the great reasons to do this in the fall is because you're not going to have a lot of things new coming up and sprouting up along with the rainy season coming. So we're going to get it around the base of this tree, give it a nice thick wood chip mulch, and this tree will be happy. Again, any work that you spend, moving the wood chips, you can call that kind of heavy labor if you want, but you're going to save your back from doing any weeding. Get this first load in. When it comes to fruit trees, I like to put the wood chips really thick, especially around older fruit trees. That's what we like to see. So we shouldn't really have any weeds coming up through that. Annuals, 4 to 6 inches about. Fruit trees, 12 inches, 8 to 12 inches, even more than that. Young fruit trees, maybe 8 to 10 inches. Some of you may be wondering how the guardian of the garden is doing. The MVP of the channel, Tuck. He's doing great. He's enjoying the weather today. We had a bunch of rainy days, so he was a little bummed out about that, hanging out inside. But now we're back out here, and he's going to be following me around as I get the rest of the loads of wood chips in. I've got a lot to move, so I'm just going to bring you along for just that one. And I think I covered a number of the things. If you guys have any more questions, let me know, and I'll make sure I can answer just as many of those as I possibly can. Love hearing from you guys so much in the comments. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got some value out of it. Hope I cleared up some questions that you might have had. And I hope that next time when I bring you soon for a tour of the food forest, of the continued progression of it, that I've got a thick layer of mulch down for you. I've also got some ideas that I want to share with you. One of them I'll talk about now because for those of you that have stayed throughout the whole video, I appreciate it. Like I talked about before, I try to, it's tough for me to make short videos because I have so much to say. I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. So I'm so thankful for all of you that have continued to stay along, because I know this is going to be a longer video. So I've got a video coming up where I'm actually going to be building a raised bed within the food forest. I think that's going to be an awesome idea. There's a number of reasons why I think it's going to work great. And I don't want to spill all my beans just yet, but just keep an eye out for that video. I'm also going to be doing a video about going out and harvesting the bamboo. So keep an eye out for that too. Ring the notification bell so when I upload, you know. And I've got some surprises coming up in the future. May have to do with merchandise, something, shirts and stuff that I've really been working on for a long time. It's taking me longer than it should, but I want to get them right because I want it to be great for you. I want to make sure I can give you something of true value that all of you truly want and find actual worth in. If you enjoyed the video, guys, again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell for me and Tuck. We want to keep up with you and contact as much as we possibly can. The channel, you guys on here, the subscribers are so positive, and you say a lot of times that I inspire you, encourage you, but you guys give that back to me fivefold. That means so much to me and Tuck. So hit down in the comments, show us some love, show us some support, and we're going to be out here, continue to bring you value and supporting you guys as much as we possibly can. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Tuck and James Prigioni, we out.